Well, welcome back, everyone. Welcome into another episode of Gamecast Radio Sports Talk. I am Tim Kernan, and I am not alongside Mike Freshwater, but Mike is joining us via the Gamecast Radio hotline. Mike, do we have you with us?
I'm here in this hotline, man. It gets hotter every weekend I'm on it, I'm telling you.
It absolutely does. The sports scene just gets hotter and hotter, doesn't it, Mike?
It does. I'd rather be there with you in the Gamecast Radio studios, but I'm in Michigan visiting family, and I'll do what I have to do. Last Saturday on the beach in South Carolina, this time up here in Drury, Michigan. I'd rather be in South Carolina.
Oh, I can imagine. Is it cold up there right now, Mike?
Nah, I think it's around 30. Just real cloudy, and yesterday it drizzled all day. Just very, very gray and depressing.
Well, Mike, last week you joined us from South Carolina. You were coaching down there with Alter High School in the Seahawk Classic. You gave us an update at that point. I know the boys were heading into, I believe it was the championship at that point. So I thought maybe you could give us a little bit of an update as how that tournament progressed and how the boys did.
Yeah, well, just to recap real quick, won our first two games, the second one in 4 overtimes, which was a classic we'll all be talking about for quite a long time. And then got a good team out of Maryland, John Carroll, a deep basketball tradition. They play a really tough schedule. Got them in the championship game without our leading scorer, R.J. Greer, who was hurt a little bit there. But we hung with them and had a chance to win. We shot poorly from the field, especially the three-point stripe, and we were only 5 for 13 to the free throw line, and that is a recipe for disaster, even as good as our defense was. So we lost on a late shot by them. We had the ball with about 10 or 15 seconds left with a shot to win it or tie it and send it in overtime. But we lost 41-39, and but altogether, everything considered, the trip was a success. Those trips are great for team building, chemistry, just building, building memories for the kids. And it was a very successful trip. We're back now practicing and getting ready for the restart of the season up here in Ohio. And we play Friday night against league rival Carroll.
And Mike, you mentioned that RJ got a little banged up down there. Is he okay now? Will he be a full go this week?
Yeah, that's the hope. He's practicing right now. It's not 100%. He's not back to 100% as far as the knee goes, but with another several days to take care of it, make sure that it heals, and we're not risking anything in terms of further damage. He should be 100% and ready to go on Friday night.
And you mentioned that the Knights, of course, lost in the championship game.
Yep.
You and I will be calling the game this Friday against, or I guess a week from yesterday, against Carroll, as you mentioned. And I don't know if you look at it officially, Mike, if it is as far as game count, but you kind of look at after you get past the holidays as maybe the second half of the season, if you will. And the Knights will be heading into, they've already had a couple of GCL games, their conference games, but they'll pretty much head into the meat of their conference schedule now after the new year. I was wondering maybe if you could give, your own, what you would give the Knights as far as a first half of the season grade, and maybe what you expect from the second half of the season.
Yeah, I think, 7-1, really good wins against some tough teams. Hilliard Bradley in the opener, who's a top 5 D1 team in the state. The win over the team from Tennessee in the second game, the 4 overtime win. I mean, there's some good wins in there. We should be undefeated. If we had RJ for that championship game, we probably would have won. But I think it's an A. I mean, kids are playing really well. Everybody's getting along. Football kids are starting to round into shape. We got 4 football guys after the state championship run that the football team had, and a couple nice GCL wins. And I don't think anybody's going to argue with this. Alder is the odds-on favorite to win the GCL. But as you know, that you got to play the games, especially in a league like that where everybody knows everybody really, really well. And so I think an A so far, and a very, very tough schedule still left. Playing at Westminster Prep and in the flying to the hoop, a loaded team, a national team really in terms of how they can compete. I'm going to Lindsley, West Virginia to play a prep school down there. We're playing Westerville North, a big Division I school, and the 614 over to High Dominican. And then our normal schedule, Fairmont, Northmont, our league. I mean, it's a tough stretch, January and early February, but I think the kids are up to it, and we're really excited about it. And I think if everybody, we stay healthy and things go as we plan and hope they'll go, we'll be sitting in a pretty good position at the end of the season in terms of looking at the state playoff.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I would give them an A as well in that first half of the season. And the sky's the limit, I think, for this team. And, you and I have called a handful of games so far. I didn't obviously travel with you all down to South Carolina, but from my perspective, I think they definitely it appeared to me, Mike, that they seem to be getting better and better each game. I know RJ transferred in this year, but all those guys know him. They've played with him before. They played with him, on the feeder team growing up, and it's not like he's a brand new player to the team. So I think they've gelled very well so far, and I've been impressed. I've said it many times on the broadcast, but I'm always very impressed with the Knights' defense, and I think it's their defense that quite often not only will get them the win sometimes, but it leads into their offense. Their defense is so good that it creates so many opportunities on the other end of the floor.
Yeah, if you watched us, we're mostly a zone team. We go back and forth a little bit between a 2-3 and a 1-3-1, but it's really long and athletic. It's getting better every week. The more they play it, the more they practice it, the more familiar they get with it. And you can really hang your hats on a solid defense night in, night out in terms of being able to lean on that to win games. You can't do that when offensively. And I use the championship game in South Carolina as a good example. We lost that game 41-39. We played easily well enough defensively to win that game. We just didn't make shots, and defense will carry the day for us the rest of the season, and hopefully make a difference in the games where we're maybe struggling a little bit offensively, and down the stretch and into the playoffs. And as you make your run, you've got to be good defensively, and so hopefully things continue to go that way for us, and we can do what we do best. And it's gonna be interesting to see, but it is getting better, Tim. I totally agree with you, and that's mostly because the more time we have to practice it, the more chemistry we can build between the guys out on the floor, and nowhere to go but up when it comes to defense.
Yeah, and you have the Twin Towers and Charlie Ewell and Matt Lunny, and I think they've done a very good job so far. Charlie has struggled a little bit with getting into foul trouble, but I thought before you all headed down to South Carolina, I thought Charlie played very well. Didn't have, I'm sure it frustrates him a little bit that he's not scoring probably as much as he wants to, but I thought he had a very good game. I think it was against Fenwick. Yeah, I believe it was Fenwick before you all headed out of town, but I thought he played very well that night and seems to be getting really comfortable in his role.
Yeah, he had a good tournament in South Carolina. In fact, he and RJ Greer were named to the all-tournament team down there because of their performances. Charlie over 3 games and RJ over 2. Excuse me. But guys like that are only going to get better. We're long, and all our length comes back. I mean, Charlie's a junior, Matt Lunny's a junior, Brady Connor 6'6", really long and athletic, the junior. Nas Fenton and Kellen Hart, 6'5" and 6'5", who come off the bench are sophomores and juniors respectively. So it is mostly about our length when you talk about our zone defense. We have active guards with really good hands and anticipation skills, but yeah, I think everybody's confident with our defense, and it's getting better and better. And Charlie and Matt and some of the junior guys are really coming along.
Yeah, Mike, going to be fun. And you and I will, as mentioned, we'll be back in the saddle this Friday. So we'll look forward to that. And Mike, right now I wanted to head into a little bit of the college football. We'll start off with Notre Dame. Of course, Notre Dame took on Oregon State yesterday in the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. And I don't know if you had a chance to watch that ball game, but Notre Dame pretty much dominated from the opening tick there. And they played with Steve Angeli. He was the backup quarterback. Sam Hartman did not play, but Steve Angeli absolutely had a great afternoon for Notre Dame. Let's see, he threw for 232 yards. He had 3 touchdowns, had a 78.9 completion percentage, and zero interceptions. And that statistic right there, I think, was one of the most important things for him in that ball game. If Notre Dame was going to be successful, I think it was one of those situations, Mike, where I don't think he had to win the game for you, but he had to manage the game and just not keep the mistakes down to a minimum, and he certainly did do that.
Yeah, I mean, I did see some of that, and he did play really, really well, and as did Notre Dame overall. But with all due respect, Oregon State, I mean, they looked like, I mean, what was that?
Oh, well, and they were depleted, and I was going to mention this a little bit later in the discussion, but I think what that game proves is Notre Dame had more depth because both teams lost some players, but it was clear that Notre Dame had more depth and was able to fill in those pieces better than Oregon State was.
Well, and they came in a little bit down, too. If I remember correctly, Oregon State had lost, I think, 3 straight games heading into that bowl game. So that's a tough proposition, right, to kind of regroup your guys and get them back together and excited about that game. But Notre Dame did what they had to do. That's the bottom line. Oregon State, I think, also was playing with an interim head coach.
They were.
Yeah, and so – but Notre Dame did what they had to do. It's a nice extra 3 or 4 weeks of practice for them, a game. Guys like the quarterback getting a little bit of experience under their belt, and hopefully it helps for them to build for next year. And, they've been active. We talked about this before. They've been active in the portal already, and there's a lot of hope right now then going into the next season for you Irish fans.
Yeah, if you lose that game, you say it's not that big of a deal. But if you win, you really feel good about things. You don't want to blow it out of proportion, but you certainly want to win that game, and you do have a good feeling heading into the off season and shortly into spring practice.
Yeah, easy to say this after the fact, but had Notre Dame lost that game, that would have been. Yeah, that might have been a tough offseason.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt. I totally agree. And, so you head into the offseason and into spring practice feeling good about yourselves. Notre Dame had 468 yards to 197 for Oregon State. I think Oregon State had 2 rushing yards, Mike. So the Notre Dame defensive line absolutely performed.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, again, they went out there and did what was expected of them, and sometimes that doesn't always happen. Those bowl games are such wild cards, but Oregon State I think they were depleted in more ways than just players. I mean, they looked like they didn't even want to be there, to be honest with you, or they partied too hard leading up to that game out there. Was that in Texas, right? Or
it was in El Paso, correct?
Yeah, right. So, but like I said, finished on a really nice uptick. I think it's it's a long off season, but kind of gets you headed in the right direction from an off season perspective, and I think the Notre Dame fans can be optimistic.
Absolutely, and they have Riley Leonard coming in, some other players, Bo Collins from Clemson, and a few others. I can't recall his name off the top of my head, but a defensive lineman from Duke. So yeah, they've been active in the portal. signed a very good class, 23 players coming in as freshmen. And another interesting thing, we talked a little bit about this last week, Mike, but there were rumors that Notre Dame was going after Mike Denbrock, who was the offensive coordinator at LSU. He actually had 2 stints at Notre Dame under Willingham and Coach Brian Kelly, but they were able to hire him away. So Coach Mike Denbrock returning to Notre Dame as the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, another good sign. I mean, that's outstanding get for them, and just another reason to be optimistic. He's obviously proven himself at the highest level, and it's a good get for Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame, I think.
Absolutely. Notable players that are returning: Howard Cross III. He is a defensive lineman for Notre Dame, along with Riley Mills, also plays on that defensive line. Xavier Watts, who was the Defensive Player of the Year and a consensus All-American for the the Irish. He played yesterday, and I don't think the official word has come out yet as to whether or not he will return, but I know Notre Dame fans and other teammates are certainly hoping that he returns. And I would consider that a 6-star recruit if Xavier Watts comes back and plays safety for Notre Dame.
Oh, I would agree. I mean, sometimes the guys that stay make decisions like that are more important than maybe the best recruit you got coming in as an incoming freshman, and that would be huge for him to make that decision and stay and be part of that team next year.
And Mike, before we move on to Ohio State, just one other question. If you look at Notre Dame as an outside observer, as you are, what would you say would be some of the biggest keys for them to get into the playoff next season? Now, I know that it is being extended out to 12 teams, so that certainly should help Notre Dame. But if they're heading into next season, what are their greatest shortcomings, if you will, that they need to attend to reach the level where they make the playoff next season?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it all starts with, and this is not as specific as maybe you might want, but I'll get into specifics. But for me, it starts with their schedule not being part of a conference. It feels like Notre Dame has to go above and beyond to kind of prove they belong, right? And then, if you assume that, I mean, next year it's a safe assumption that the Power Five conference champions are in, and maybe even like the league champions, if they don't win the conference champions, might be cinches, locks to get in because of the way they've stacked the conferences now. Notre Dame has to do a little bit more to prove that they belong. So to me, it really starts with their schedule. And I was trying to look it up real quick. I don't know who all they play, but
it's not
typical,
quite as daunting as this season, but it's still tough.
Yeah, I'm sure it's tough. And probably for Notre Dame, I mean, where I think there's going to be some teams that get in next year with 2 losses, I'm not sure they can afford to do that, just because of the lack of affiliation with the conference. So I mean, it really starts with their schedule and their results, and they don't have the benefit of a conference championship game and all that stuff. So, but I think beyond that, I think also. And, we talked about going into this coming season, the quarterback situation didn't kind of pan out the way Irish fans had hoped with Hartman coming in from Wake Forest. But what was it, Georgia Tech? Wake Forest, right?
Wake Forest, correct.
Yeah, it's going to start and end with Riley Leonard and what he can do and how much better he makes that offense. And then secondly, and you've talked about it time and time again, and that is can they feature a couple high-profile, All-American level wide receivers on offense? Because while you do need to run the ball to be good in college, you also got to be able to throw it the way teams spread the field nowadays. And so if they can develop and end up next year with 1 or 2, All-American candidate kinds of wide receivers, I think that's going to go a really, really long way. And they've already done, already bringing in the defensive coordinator. I think that's going to help on that side of the football. But what Leonard can do and that against that schedule, and can they develop a couple really good wide receivers, I think are keys for Notre Dame next year, and making the assumption that the new coach is going to make some improvements on the defensive side. They're set up to have, I think, a really good season. You talked about some of the draft portal people they've brought in, and their recruiting class isn't awful. I mean, it's still top 10. Again, I think there's a lot of optimism, but there's still question marks around whether the quarterback really is who he is, and can they develop some guys that can catch the ball in big spots and have really good seasons overall.
I couldn't agree with you more, Mike. I think you absolutely nailed it. I think it's the play of the quarterback. Hopefully Riley Leonard will fit in well up at Notre Dame, and it is the development of the wide receivers. They did hire Coach Brown out of, I think it was Wisconsin, away from Luke Fickell, and he did coach with Friedman at Cincinnati. So hopefully, we kind of make assumptions about that wide receiver room, but something wasn't right. But they've made the changes. They brought in Mike Denbrock to make some changes on the offensive side of the ball. So we'll see what happens. But you also mentioned the Notre Dame's recruiting class. They did have a very good recruiting class. It was ranked 10th in two of the companies that do that type of thing. 247 Sports had them at 10th. On 3 had him at 10th, and Rivals had him at 9th. So a very good class. And these things, of course, change so much, but the 2025 class, Notre Dame's class, is ranked number 1 right now. Now, that is way too early ranking right now, but as far as that class goes, it's number 1 right now. But
well, if they can have a really good season next year and get recruits excited about that, and if they're willing to spend the money that the top level programs are spending NIL wise, there's no reason why they can't be there year in, year out.
I agree with you totally, and we'll see what happens.
There can't be any shortage of folks in the Notre Dame Irish alumni pipeline, or even outside alumni who are willing to help pay for players and get them there. That can't be the problem. It's got to be some other reason why they're not willing to do that. But I suspect sooner or later they're going to dip into that pretty quickly and be competitive with other teams, like Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, that are spending the money to get the guys that come and play for them.
Yeah, they are willing to do it. This is what I have been told, but they are not going to get into the pay for play. I know that they're going to do the NIL, but it's going to be after the players get to Notre Dame. I don't know if that particular ingredient and all that is going to keep them from getting to that level or not. But
right.
But they are willing to pay or do the NIL. The funds are there. You're absolutely right. But that is something that they're not going to do. So we'll see. Yep. We'll see going forward.
Yep.
All right, Mike, I thought I know that you probably don't want to talk about this, but I thought we would head into the Ohio State game. And, I watched that whole game, and it was painful in the first half. But I mentioned to you and I were texting back and forth, but I thought Ohio State was Ohio State in name only last night. I thought
offensively.
Yes, offensively. Their defense absolutely played well enough to win that game without question.
They dominated Missouri, but when you get put in such difficult situations time and time again, you're out on the field a lot. You're defending, crappy field positions over and over and over. It's going to catch up to you sooner or later. I mean, it's interesting to watch the social media reaction and the national reaction, and just kind of, if I was Jim Knowles and the defensive guys, I'd be so angry right now because they're kind of lumping everybody all in one big, bucket and talking about how bad Ohio State was. But the defense was great. I mean, they held Missouri to 3 points over three quarters, right? They gave up 2 touchdowns late, but I mean, that you could see that coming. It was all about the offense last night, and the fact that Devin Brown got hurt early, and the offensive line did not look good, and Lincoln Kindholz did not look prepared. I mean, it was all about the offense. It was awful, admittedly, and you can't win against a top 10 team 3-0 or 6-3. You're not. That's not going to happen. And so it was all about the offense. And so for me, it all starts. We've had a little bit of conversation already with regard to Notre Dame and their coaching staff. And to me, it starts with the coaching staff. There has to be some changes now, I think, that Ryan Day has to make more than just hiring a coordinator. And by the way, that might not be a bad idea if he did that on the offensive side. But there has to be some changes because it's the same old story now over and over and over the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, a really good regular season, unfortunately a loss to Michigan, and then a terrible bowl game. And it feels like it looks like the same season, kind of Groundhog Day over and over and over when it comes to Ohio State at the end of the year. And so I feel like you can't fire players, you can't get rid of everybody. I guess Deion Sanders can, but you're not going to do that at Ohio State, and I think there need to be some changes. I would start with the special teams coach. I think that they got to make a change there. I personally don't think they need a guy specifically and exclusively only to coach special teams. I think that's a role that can be handed off to somebody, a position coach on maybe the defensive side of the ball to focus on a little more, and they could probably use that coach's opening to do something else. But I think there need to be some changes. I think Ryan Day needs to get away from – they have a quarterback coach. It's actually Urban Meyer's, I think, son-in-law or something like that.
Oh, really?
But he only coaches like the backup. Ryan Day coaches the starter. There has to be a change there because the quarterbacks just, especially this year, they didn't look prepared and ready. And I don't know if McCord got noticeably different between week 1 and the end of the season. I think he needs to get away from calling plays. They need an offensive coordinator, somebody who can focus on that day in, day out, and probably and then call plays for them on game day. Ryan Day would certainly have a ton of input into that in terms of how they develop their game plans and what they're going to do and all that kind of stuff. But I think you need somebody that's just focused on a day-to-day basis on the offense and current schemes and strategies and all the new things that are kind of developing. It seems like year in, year out, and it's because I just don't think you can be a head coach at a major program like that and own one side of the ball or the other. Thinking off the top of my head, like I know Nick Saban doesn't do anything. Right. I mean, he's
the CEO.
Right. He's the CEO, and he just has. I just think, off the top of my head, those are a couple of changes I think that need to be made from a coaching perspective. And Ryan Day needs to absolutely show the fan base and his administration that he's willing to make those changes. I think this is his last chance. If they don't do a lot better next year, especially at the end of the season, then he's not going to be there after this year. But to me, it starts with the coaches and some of those key spots, and bringing on an offensive coordinator, and hopefully that would be enough to make a difference. They've got a top 4 or 5, 3 or 4 really recruiting class, so they lost a couple guys late. They still have some really high-profile kids coming in. Maybe the number 1 wide receiver recruit in the country, one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the country. It's not all that bad. There is a lot of question about some of these guys and whether or not they're going to come back. They haven't committed one way or the other. Like Travion Henderson, he hasn't said one way or the other whether he's going to declare for the draft or come back.
That would be a huge loss.
Yeah, and there's 4 or 5 other guys, starters obviously, key guys that are kind of sitting on the fence as well. So that's a big area for concern. I think those are things that need to change, and if he doesn't make those changes, and if he does, they don't work, and either way, he's probably got a problem at the end of the season next year. And he's not going to get fired. I mean, I've heard all these people talking about firing. Gene Smith is not going to fire him. Gene Smith is in the last year of his contract there at Ohio State. The last thing he wants is to have to fire a coach and go through the whole process of hiring somebody who then gets a new AD, almost immediately. Ryan Day's not going anywhere. He's not going to get fired, but he's got to make changes, and we'll see if he does that. He admitted as much last night after the game that everything is up for grabs in terms of looking at areas they need to make changes. And those are my thoughts on where they need to go with those changes. And the other thing is, Tim, we just talked about how active Notre Dame's been in the portal. I don't think Ohio State signed one portal kid yet. I mean, so why aren't we just?
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Why aren't they just a little bit more active in the portal? Again, a really good recruiting class, 25 guys coming in, but you're telling me there's nothing you can do with some of those guys in the portal to come in and help your team. So, I went into that game not really caring that much about the game itself as a fan. I was more interested in seeing what Devin Brown would do with a month of practice and preparation with the ones and a whole game to kind of prove he belonged, but that didn't materialize, right?
Yeah.
He got hurt immediately, so it was not a good night for Ohio State and Buckeyes fans. But hopefully we can all put it behind us and look forward and start to talk about next season and the excitement that's going to come with a new schedule, new teams, a 12-team football, 12-team playoff format, and just forget about it.
Well,
it was not good.
Yeah, I'll just make one more comment about Ohio State, but the defense is there without question. Jim Knowles has the defense cooking at Ohio State, but you can't continue to put your defense in bad situations and leave them on the field. The Ohio State defense was on the field almost the entire game. Eventually, they're going to break down. And their offense made it easy on Missouri. They were able to go to single coverage because they knew their quarterbacks couldn't complete a pass, which almost made it impossible for Travion Henderson to run the football, where he was having some success early, Mike. And, boy, he's a fantastic running back. And for Ohio State fans, I hope he returns because he's the real deal.
Yeah, as soon as Brown got hurt, Missouri just kind of loaded up on the offensive line. And
absolutely.
Kind of dared Ohio State to throw it. They put a lot more bodies up at the point of attack that Ohio State could manage or deal with. And the offensive line, most of whom were starters. I think there was one or two new guys in there. They struggled, and it was not a good night for the offense. And Ryan Day is the offensive quote-unquote coordinator and quarterbacks coach, pseudo quarterbacks coach. And so really, it really is he is the one that has to be held accountable for last night, not Jim Knowles and the defense. They were stellar. They were Final Four type of a defense. And like you said, they just got put in tough positions. And by the way, everybody's like, well, it was stinking Missouri. No, Missouri didn't stink this year, guys. They had 2 losses, both single-digit losses to LSU and Georgia. I mean, they had a good season. They were a good team.
They were.
And so it's not a surprise they came out there and played well. I mean, they were good this year. Number 9 team ranked in the country, 11-2, and so it's Ohio State should beat Missouri, kill them every year. I'm like, no, I mean that's not college football anymore. There's a lot more parity than there ever has been, but I think I said this last night to you, and I'll say it here. Those bowl games, they've really kind of just we've kind of entered the era of irrelevancy, and I can't even say the word
irrelevant.
When it comes, when it comes to these bowl games outside the college football playoff format, because between opt-outs and the portal and all this other crap, I mean, these teams do not resemble the same team they were when they finished the season.
They don't, Mike. And I have one comment about that. I know that okay, Ohio State and Missouri played in the Cotton Bowl last night. Okay,
I know.
they're gonna make a big chunk of money, but let's say one of these lower tier bowls.
Yep.
If you have players opting out, school, I fear that schools at some point, if they're not making money off the bowl game, if it's costing them all this money for their team to travel, and you have a situation where you did last night, I just have a feeling that some schools are going to say no, we're not doing it.
I think Ohio State going forward. I'll use Ohio State as an example, but you can plug in Georgia, Alabama, Michigan. If those teams don't make the top 12 and aren't in the playoffs, they should decline or not even
Yeah.
be offered secondary bowl games.
If you're not in New Year's Six, they call it, or the playoffs, I can see some schools pulling out and saying, "Look, we're not spending the money to do this."
I heard the Miami of Ohio AD. They went to a bowl game, and its name of it off the top of my head totally escapes me right now. He said without help from alumni and other people, they would have lost money traveling to that bowl game. Even though they've got guys that aren't opting out and all that kind of stuff. So it's not like outside of the New Year's Six. I don't think schools make a ton of money off of them. They want to take their band, right?
Yeah.
It costs money.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, that could very easily happen. That we may not get. We're at 42 bowl games right now, right? 42 bowl games.
Yeah.
And that may start to dwindle. It may start going back the other direction from where it came. If this all starts to, if that really happens.
Yeah. Yep. I could definitely see it happening. But speaking of the ball games, Mike, we have a handful today, and then of course the big ones on January the 1st. But you got the Peach Bowl today, Penn State versus Ole Miss. Ole Miss is +4.5. You got the Music City Bowl, which is at 2:00. Auburn versus Maryland. The Orange Bowl, Florida State versus Georgia. That should be a good one, provided that the teams have players that have stayed on and are going to play in it. That should be a very interesting game down there in the Orange Bowl. And the Arizona Bowl, you have Toledo versus Wyoming. The ReliaQuest Bowl, which is Monday. These are the Monday bowls. You got LSU versus Wisconsin. And that LSU, I'm telling you, Brian Kelly drives me nuts. He always picks games he knows he can win. The Citrus Bowl, you have Iowa versus Tennessee. The Fiesta Bowl is Oregon versus Liberty. That kills me. Liberty Flames against Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl, and Oregon is -17.5 in that one. Crazy, but Liberty's 13-0 out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think Liberty got an exemption to be allowed to even play in the bowl game, and I don't remember the specifics, but they're in the process. Isn't it Liberty that's in or the JMU? Never mind, forget it. It's James Madison I was thinking of. But Liberty has who's there? Hugh Freeze. They've got a big time former Power 5 coach there who's done a really good job of bringing them back. Yeah, well, not back, but bringing them to relevancy. And
Crazy.
And they're playing Oregon.
They're playing Oregon. Right? That game will just be interesting to see how they perform against the Ducks. I mean, Oregon's number 8. Liberty climbed all the way up to number 23. So interesting. And good for them. Good for them for getting invited to the Fiesta Bowl. I know Oregon probably is going into that one thinking, oh my, who is Liberty? But they could be caught off guard, especially if they're losing some pieces. So that one will be interesting as well. That one's 1:00 on ESPN.
Yeah, Liberty their head coach is Jamie Chadwell. He is the 2023 Conference USA Co-Coach of the Year. And I think he is the Paul Bear Bryant Group of 5 Coach of the Year as well. So he's had a really good season. And,
absolutely.
But it will be interesting to see how they do against Oregon. That's a pretty big stage for Liberty out of the Conference USA.
And then, of course, Mike, on Monday, the two big ball games, the Rose Bowl at 5 o'clock has number one Michigan versus number four Alabama. Right now, at least as far as my information goes, that's a pick 'em. And then
Yeah.
the Sugar Bowl on Monday at 8:45. Number two Washington goes up against the number three Texas Longhorns, and right now they have the Texas Longhorns as -4.
Yeah, that's fun. That's a New Year's Day. Those are New Year's Day games, and that kind of makes you reminisce about the old days when, all those games were on one right after the other, and it was just a full
Absolutely.
day of great football. I think the Alabama Michigan, first of all, playing in the Rose Bowl, in and of itself is a spectacle. Even if it's the Big Ten runner-up and in the Pac-12, conference champion in the past, like it has been, but it's a spectacle in and of itself. Maybe one of the top two or three sports spectacles year in, year out. Right there with the Kentucky Derby and the Indianapolis 500. I mean, it's just a spectacular scene there, and the environment, the atmosphere, and all that stuff. So the clash of colors. You're going to
Oh
have
yeah, they always have
the
that Rose Bowl decked out.
yeah. So I'm looking forward to that game. I'm really going to be, as much as I hate to even say or do this, my hatred for Michigan far outweighs my disdain for Alabama. So it's going to be like, I hope they tie, but I know that's not possible.
Oh,
Um,
that's funny.
but I'm going to be an Alabama fan watching that game. I've kind of got over that Alabama thing, and the fact that they're playing Michigan helped. But I do think Alabama, just putting that aside, I do think Alabama wins that game. In fact, I think Alabama ends up playing Texas in a rematch of the regular season game in the national championship game. I think Alabama wins a close one against Texas at the end. I mean, that's just my looking at it as impartially as I can. And I've been saying this for a long time. You can remember several weeks ago on this podcast how I said that Alabama was out there at number 8 or 9 in the country, kind of lurking in the weeds, watching everything go on ahead of them. And sure enough, here they are, though extremely lucky to be there. If it wasn't for a referee not making an obvious call on that offensive pass interference in the end zone against Alabama and against Auburn that won the game for them, they wouldn't be where they're at. But they are, and who's better than Nick Saban, right? The GOAT.
Yeah, he really is something else, and I agree with you. They are lucky to be there, but for some
They're there.
reason, yeah, they're there, and I just think they have that it factor, just some intangible that that's well deserved that they've developed over time by continuously being in the playoffs and winning the national
Yeah.
championship. That I agree with you. I think Alabama comes away with a win, and I'm going to differ from you a little bit on the second game. I think Washington is just their offense is so good. I just don't know if Texas is good enough to totally stop them, but we'll see. I think that is going to be a fantastic game. If Washington does go on to win, I don't think it'll be by many. I think that's going to be a close one.
Yeah, it's going to be close. I think Texas is the slight favorite, 3 or 4 points right now. Definitely going to be close. Um, Texas is loaded though roster wise. I mean, they've got 4 and 5 stars across the board.
Well,
Sarkisian seems to know what he's doing, but you're right, 100%. Anything can happen. And Washington finished the season on a roll, had a very tough schedule, and didn't lose a game. So that's going to be a good one.
yeah, and Mike, I wanted to mention before we stop talking about Ohio State, they were at 247. They had their incoming class at 6. On 3 had them at number 5. Rivals also had them at number 5. And we were just talking about Texas. Alabama, of course, is 1 and 2 with Georgia. Georgia got the number 1 class in all 3 formats.
I think Georgia stole got an OSU guy to flip, a 5-star guy to flip late in the process, which probably
Put them over
precipitated
the
them kind of
top.
moving
Yeah.
it. Yeah, putting them ahead of Ohio State. That stuff happens now, right? Guys are getting late offers before they before they sign, and I think that happened. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. I think it was a D lineman that flipped from Ohio State to Georgia at the very end, 5-star guy, and I think that made a difference in the rankings between those two teams.
And we were just talking about Texas. Texas right there too, Mike. They're 4 in the 247. On 3 has them as number 3, and Rivals has Texas at number 2. So, you know, there's always that saying, "Oh, Texas is back." Well, you might say that just by them getting into the playoff, but it appears like their recruiting trail is pretty hot now as well. So I expect Texas to be in the mix in the next couple of years.
Absolutely, and they should be.
Yeah.
They're in arguably, maybe not even arguable, the best football state in terms of high school football in the country.
I'm not going to argue with you on that one.
They should own Texas and own recruits out of Texas and be able to grab guys here and there nationally that they want. Why they fell off to the side just a little bit is ridiculous.
It is kind of
sitting
mind-boggling.
Right. They're sitting there in the throne, right, and they're going into the SEC now. So I'd be surprised. And where else are you going to go, coach? If Texas isn't a destination kind of a job, Sarkisian is where, you know, where can he go to make himself any better, having rebounded from some issues he's had in the past, and
he certainly has done that.
Yeah, I mean, they're right there, and they're going to be there. They are a lock, like you said, to be really good for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Well, Mike, while we're on college football, let's go ahead and do our picks. I have 4 picked out for us. I thought we would do the Orange Bowl, Florida State versus Georgia. Florida State is plus 16.5. Very interesting line there. So go ahead and make your pick on that.
That's a lot of points. They're obviously trying to recover from the disappointment of not being in the Final Four. They're playing their backup quarterback. They've lost some other guys that are opting out. A lot of points, Tim. I'm going to take the points.
Okay, so you're going with Florida State?
Yeah, and the points, yeah.
All right.
A lot of points. I like the underdogs, generally speaking, in the bowl game. This game may not be a good gauge of that, but, yeah, I'll take the points. I'll take Florida State the points.
I think both of these teams are ticked off by not getting selected into the playoff, but I'm going to go with Georgia just because I think they're ticked off even more, and I think they feel like they have something to prove a little bit. Didn't get a chance to do a three-peat, so I'm going to go with Georgia. It is a lot of points, but just to make it exciting, I'm going to go with Georgia on that one. The ReliaQuest Bowl, which is Monday. LSU Tigers versus Wisconsin. LSU 9-3, Wisconsin 7-5. The Badgers are 9.5 plus 9.5.
Ooh, man, these are tough. These point spreads take it awful hard, don't they?
And with who's going to play, you just never know who's going to play.
Well, that's true, but I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with LSU. Big Ten teams against SEC usually hasn't been a good matchup lately. So much as I hate to do it, I'm going to take LSU and give Wisconsin and the Fighting Fickles. They can have the 10 points.
I'm going to go with LSU as well. As much as it goes against every fiber of my being, I am going to go with LSU. Minus 9.5. And then we'll go to Monday, Mike. You and I kind of already did these. I believe you went with Alabama. I'm going to go with Alabama as well. So we're both on the Crimson Tide in that ball game. And I believe you went with Texas against Washington. Texas minus 4. So I'm going to go with Washington, and Mike, you are going with Texas. So
correct.
We'll see what happens in those 4, and we'll report back next week. And while we're on the subject, I'll give an update as far as our picks go. You are 30-19 after going 3-1 last week. I went 1-3 in college, or at least as far as those first bowl game picks. I'm 23-26, so I am not doing well. You are smoking me at the college level. You went
But
3 and go ahead.
I was gonna say, but let's look at the NFL.
Well, you went 3-2, and I went 3-2, so we kind of held form there. You are 27-34 in the pros, and I'm 40-21. So it's
You're really killing it.
a tale of two levels right there.
Yeah, between the two of us, we could probably be making some money on Saturday and Sunday if we kind of work together on it.
I think we could absolutely. We'll go over the pros quickly here because I did want to get into a little bit of yes, no, maybe. But
Yep.
the playoffs and the pros starting to, if you will, Mike, kind of sort itself out, although there's still a lot of jockeying around that can certainly happen. But the playoff picture is certainly heating up, covering the Bengals as we do. The Bengals just absolutely looked horrible against the Steelers. They have fallen
Mind-boggling.
to 8-7, and they will take on the Chiefs on Sunday tomorrow.
Oh.
Boy, I tell you, on the road, and obviously still without Joe Burrow. I believe Jamar Chase is going to play in that game. We'll see how much. But the Bengals, they need a whole lot to go wrong for other teams for them to make the playoffs. But they just
Yeah.
look terrible against the Steelers. They're obviously in a must-win situation tomorrow against the Chiefs, but they're 0-5 in the division, Mike, and they just have a very slim chance, at least from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, that's just insane. They're 0-5. They might go 0-6 in the division. Although, depending on what happens with the Ravens tomorrow, the Browns might sit some guys in that game, which will help the Bengals' chances. But I saw a stat the other day. Zach Taylor is 10-20 in the AFC North.
Isn't that
I mean,
crazy?
you would never expect that from a guy who's taken his team to the doorstep of the Super Bowl 2 of the last 3 years. So, yeah, they can't, and they're 0-5 this year. I mean, say what you want about Marvin Lewis, but when he was there, his two priorities were win at home and win in the AFC North. So he built, and he had reasonable success doing both. The Bengals seem to be built to win NFC games, but not win AFC North games. It just doesn't. It's a befuddling kind of a thing, especially for Bengals fans. But it's a weird stat, and I think his overall record is under 500 too, Zach Taylor. So, but we all know about how patient the Brown family is, and the Bengals are with their head coaches, and he's not in any kind of trouble whatsoever.
No, I agree.
But needs to figure out how to win games in the AFC North, right? Because we all know the trouble they've had with the Browns over the last 2 or 3 years, and they're obviously not beating the Steelers. The other night was just a dismal thing. I mean, it was terrible for Bengals fans and the Bengals.
It really
But,
was. And I mean, you can blame it on the fact that Burrow is hurt, of course. Yeah, that's part of it. But even their defense just looked terrible, too. I mean, they did not get off the bus, Mike. They just did not get off the bus to play in that game.
Yeah. And the way Jake Browning had been playing, I mean, he was the AFC Offensive Player of the Week, I think, 1 week. And so he kind of, he's kind of proved that he can win without Joe Burrow. Maybe Jamar Chase is the key factor, though, because as soon as he went down, Browning and the offense struggled, but the defense was awful last week against a bad Pittsburgh Steelers offense, really, this season. And so it's hard to figure out. The NFL in general is hard to figure out. But,
Sure is.
The Bengals aren't eliminated, and so as long as there's hope, right?
I guess.
There's still hope.
It is crazy. But, yeah, the Bengals made Mason Rudolph look like a Pro Bowler, but it was disappointing because I thought that they would come out with a little fire, especially, with a decent, at least last week, a decent chance to sneak into the playoffs.
Absolutely.
But boy, you just they laid an egg in that one, and it was disappointing. No matter how many players are out, they just didn't come to play.
No, and at this point, everybody has injury issues, God knows, and you can't use that as an excuse anymore. Half the teams in the NFL are playing with backup quarterbacks, and it's just what it is in the NFL nowadays. It's about your depth, your ability to fill in spots for people when people do get hurt, and the Steelers just aren't that good. They really aren't. They
No.
did it with smoke and mirrors all year, but they certainly did it convincingly last weekend. That's for sure.
And on the other side of the coin, real quick here, Mike, the Browns are 180 degree. Their arrow is pointing the opposite direction of the Bengals right now. The Browns are 11-5, defeated the Jets Thursday night, looked very good. The Jets are hapless, but the Browns did what they had to do. Flacco still looking very good. You mentioned to me several times, why in the world didn't somebody else pick up Flacco? And I have to totally concur. But the Browns are doing it with a mash unit, Mike. It's unbelievable how they have been able to fill pieces of injured players, and you got to give credit to the organization and coach. He's just absolutely done a fantastic job with the Browns.
Thursday night was a microcosm, right? They had a new punter and a new kicker because both the punter and kickers got hurt on Sunday.
Where'd they get them from? Walmart or something like that? I mean,
both of them were off the couch, man. Neither one of them were in the league, and just like Flacco, they got him off the couch, and it didn't seem to matter. It's insane. Something like, I think I've mentioned this stat before, somewhere between 25 and 30% of their opening day rosters out for the year. Not to mention the injuries they had to deal with on a week-to-week basis. They lost a wide receiver. So Cooper didn't play the other night, right? So I thought that was it. They're going to lose without him after the week he had the week before. And then their second best wide receiver gets hurt, gets a concussion, and has to come out. I don't know who these guys are playing wide receiver for them now, but it's slowly but surely becoming the story of not just the year, but maybe of the decade in terms of how a team's been able to deal with that and win like they have. And
impressive.
I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. But if the Ravens win Sunday, the Browns can rest dudes for a week. There's guys who maybe slightly banged up at this point and need the time to heal. They won't care about the Bengals game the following weekend on New Year's Eve. And, I don't know if it's good or bad. If the Ravens lose, all those guys are going to have to play because the Browns would they would still have a chance to win the division. In fact, get the number one seed overall in the AFC, which is even mind-boggling to say.
It is crazy.
If the Ravens lose Sunday, and then they lose the following weekend, and they've got a tough game the following week. I think it's the Steelers. You can say what you want about the Steelers, but that is a big rivalry game.
Sure.
I mean, the Browns can sneak in, but so the Browns are kind of in a good spot because if the Ravens win, they can rest dudes. If the Ravens lose, they're playing for potential division title. So I don't know, man. I mixed emotions about this. I really would like to see them have a chance to rest guys and help and let them have a chance to get healthy prior to the playoff starting. But the fact we're talking about it right now is just mind-boggling to me. I still can't wrap my head around it.
It is. It'll be fun to see what happens. But well, Mike,
Yeah.
I got 4 games picked out for the pros. We'll go over these quickly, and then I have a couple of questions, and then we'll wrap up for today. But
Okay.
Let's do the Bengals at the Chiefs. Chiefs are -6.5.
Both teams coming off bad losses. The Chiefs are at home. Not going to be Burrowhead Stadium this weekend. 6.5. I think the Chiefs are going to win. I don't think it's going to be by 6.5. I think the Bengals can hang with them. Chiefs are really struggling offensively. Tim, long-winded answer. I'll take the Bengals in the points.
All right. I am just going to go for a little bit of reverse psychology here. I'm going to pick the Chiefs, hoping that will make the Bengals win. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs in that one. Dolphins and the Ravens. The Ravens are -3. Dolphins at the Ravens.
Dolphins are not good on the road. They are not. And if there's weather in Baltimore tomorrow, and I have no idea if there is or not, I don't think it's going to be awful. But the Ravens are still trying to clinch the overall 1 seed and win the division, and I think they win that game pretty easily, probably, and cover the 3 for sure.
I agree. I'm going to go on the Ravens as well. Next game, Steelers at the Seahawks. Seahawks are -3.5.
I'm going to take the Seahawks. That's a tough road trip for an East Coast team to make, to go up there and play. It's a really loud stadium, and the Seahawks aren't terrible. So I'll take the Seahawks in that game.
I'm going to take the Steelers just because I think they're so lucky that I think they'll find some way to win that stupid game again. Plus, they get the 3.5, so I'm going to go with the Steelers. And
I've now figured out how you're doing so well in the NFL. You're taking the opposite of everything that I picked.
Well, I don't know. Maybe that is the key.
It absolutely is the key. They call that fading, right? When you find somebody who's terrible at picking games and you pick the opposite, that's called fading, and you're fading me right now.
I have never heard of that, but maybe that is the case. Final one, Mike. This is an intriguing one. I'm really interested in this game because I still can't figure out who the heck the Cowboys are. But the Lions are at the Cowboys. Cowboys are -5.5. The Lions are already in the playoffs.
Right.
What are they going to do in that game?
Yeah, that's a good question. But are they resting guys? I don't know specifically, but that's in Dallas, right?
Yes.
You said in Dallas is still playing a little bit for some position. So the Cowboys are, again, another team that's really, really good at home, and they struggle on the road. They have all season. They asked Jerry Jones why, and I think he said, because the game's we played inside.
That's right.
But it's I'm taking the Cowboys. I think they prevail at home and cover that point spread.
I'm not going to fade on this one, Mike. I'm going to go with the Cowboys as well.
Now you're tailing me. That's called tailing.
Okay, I'm tailing you on that one. All right, Mike. This is the segment of the show when I make a statement and you and I both say yes, no, maybe. We'll do these real quick and wrap up the show for today.
Okay.
One of them we kind of veered into a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it as well, but not the first one. With the new college football playoff format starting next season, a non-Power 5 team will win the national championship at some point.
No. I don't have any. I mean, I'm trying to think of somebody off the top of my head. I mean, Notre Dame's Power 5, even though they're not in the conference. That's what you're saying. I mean, we're assuming that, right?
Yeah, I'm assuming Notre Dame is part of that Power 5.
Yeah, no, I'd say no.
I'm going to have to say no as well. I don't think it's possible, especially with the way things are changing so much. I think that the haves are getting bigger than the have-nots.
And it's not like you just have to win one game, right? I mean, you got to win and beat 2 or 3 really good teams, and
great point.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah. Next question, Mike. Devin Brown will be the starting QB for Ohio State in 2024.
Ooh, maybe. That's a weak maybe. I don't want to say no, but maybe. No, it's a strong maybe. That's what I guess I'm on that. It's a strong maybe.
I would say maybe as well, but I'm kind of leaning towards no. I think Ohio State's going to make a move. I think they're either going to pick somebody up should another interesting quarterback make a move. I don't think they're just going to pick somebody up unless it's, somebody who's a proven winner. But I think either the freshman coming in that they got is going to take the position, or, maybe he does improve in the spring and over the summer. But I'll have to go with maybe as well, with maybe a slight lean to no.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, next question, and this is the one where I thought we kind of veered into a little bit during the show, but Ryan Day will be on the hot seat in 2024.
Absolutely, yes. He is on the hot seat already, and it's not 2024 yet. So, yeah, this next year's his last chance, and like I said before, they're going to have a new AD going into the ensuing season, and we all know what that means usually. And so I think he's got his job is on the line next season, and so he is solidly on a very hot seat in 2024.
Yeah, at the end of the season, I maybe would have said no to that question, but I think with the way that things, well, I should say prior to the Michigan game, but with what I didn't think he was necessarily on the hot seat after the Michigan game, but with the way things have progressed a little bit, and again, I don't think that the bowl game is necessarily his fault, but they did not have any answers on offense. I think that he has to make some changes, but I agree with you. He's definitely on the hot seat.
Yep.
And this is kind of a fun one, Mike, but and we'll end the show with this, but Dick Clark was the best TV show host ever.
Wow. Holy crap. Oh, man. Visions of Link Martindale running through my head right now. If you're talking about musical TV show, I'll go yes. If you're talking about like including game shows, I'm going to go no, because I love Bob Eubanks and the Newlywed Game, and so Dick Clark, yes. If it's music, no. If it's all encompassing kind of a question, but I loved Dick Clark and everything he did and all those shows. They were fantastic.
I'm going to say yes, just because I loved Dick Clark. I thought he was great. When you saw him on the TV, you knew it was kind of a big deal. And I thought he did a great job with the New Year's Rockin' Eve and things like that. I don't even watch it anymore because he's not on there. He passed away.
They still call it Dick Clark's Rockin' Eve, I think. Like Ryan Seacrest or something is the host now, or something like that.
Yeah, I know they did. I don't know if they still do or not, but you're correct. They did.
Pretty sure. Yeah. He long gone but not forgotten.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for us today. Really appreciate you joining us for Gamecast Radio Sports Talk. Mike, thanks for calling in from Michigan. I look forward to having you back in the studio and calling the Ultra game this Friday night.
Looking forward to it. Can't wait.
All right, Mike, and folks, enjoy the sports this weekend. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time on Gamecast Radio Sports Talk.
So long, everybody.